Hey everyone, how you doing? This is Amon Green, Gourmet Packers all-time leading rusher, and you're watching Packers Total Access Live, your daily source for Packer content. Go Pack, go!
What's up, guys? Welcome into Packers Total Access. My name is Clayton. You can check us out on packernet.com. Find me on Twitter at Packers_access. We are flying solo as of the moment. Emilio may be joining us here shortly as Jacob had other obligations in the office. And Tim is doing way more important things right now. Now, we are live on YouTube, Facebook, X, and Rumble here to talk some Packers this evening. Hopefully everybody's having an awesome Friday night. Man, there's no better way to wrap up the week than getting on here, hanging out with you guys and gals, talking a little Packers football. As we got several topics we're going to dive into. We're going to hit on some of the questions in our Patreon group, kind of get a feel for how everybody's what's at the forefront of everybody's mind, I guess you could say, getting ready to go into the draft here. Yeah, everybody fired up about it being Friday. And Blake B in the chat says, I've been waiting for Ryan Schlip to dig into the Dane Brugler Beast Guide that just dropped. I want the dirt on all these prospects' backgrounds. I think you're going to be happy with the show tonight. And by the way, that's one of my favorite things that Ryan does every single season, just him kind of going through the different scouting reports. And you know, he and I both have a great deal of respect for Dane Brugler. I love what he does. I think he's very detailed. He's very meticulous. He doesn't take the easy way out is what I appreciate about it. And I understand that some of the other guys like the Daniel Jeremiahs and people like that, they're way too busy working with networks, things like that, to dive into every prospect. But Dane Brugler, man, he covers all the bases. And listen, it's not to say he's perfect. I'm sure he's got plenty of scouting reports he could tell you he got wrong, or not necessarily wrong. You're talking about what these players did at the college level, but you're trying to predict how they're going to project to the NFL. And guys, it's damn near impossible. It is impossible. It's impossible to bat 100. Bat 1,000. It's impossible to bat 500 and get half of them right. Successful GMs, I don't know the exact number. I've heard people say anywhere from 15 to 30% success rate in the draft, and that's considered, man, that's a successful draft. So it just depends on who you listen to in that regard. And that's what cracks me up about the draft nicks every year. If you guys haven't heard that term, I'm a draft nick. So it's not, if you consider yourself a draft nick, there's no slander there. It's just we all are trying to figure out how can we best not really predict, but understand the draft every year. And the people that, I told y'all that guy was going to be good. Yeah, you told us 5,500 other prospects were going to be good over the last 3 years too, and you hit on 3. And you're like, we're all guilty of that. Right. I try not to be that dude on Twitter that goes around saying, hey, man, we got that one right. We got that one right. It's fun when you hit on one and you go, man, we really caught. Like Ryan, for example, Pack Daddy here on Packernet Podcast, he hit on Zach Tom. I'll never forget it. He was the only guy on the face of the earth I heard talking about Zach Tom. And lo and behold, they drafted him. I'm like, hey, Ryan got his guy. And bam, he's about to get paid. Right, and rightfully so. I mean, the dude's an absolute stud. So we're going to dig in to a few prospects and use Dane Brugler's his scouting report. And if you guys are in the Patreon group, you've probably already seen the articles we're going to cover. So I'm really excited about that. Shout out to Pointer Doug becoming a new member here on YouTube. We'll make sure you're entered into the giveaway. By the way, that we were going to do it on tomorrow's show, but there's not going to be a night show tomorrow. We're going to do a morning show because I've got a nephew's high school graduation to attend, and we got, of course, the after dinner and all that. So no show tomorrow night, but we will be doing tomorrow morning. So I thought, let's wait till Sunday's show to do the giveaway. So you guys will have an extra day. If you want to get yourself entered into the contest to get the autographed rookie Katan Oladapo card, all you got to do is be a member either here on YouTube or what I recommend, whichever you prefer. But if you're a member on Patreon, that's where you're getting a lot more bang for your buck. For $3, you're getting access to everything over there. All the scouting reports we're throwing up, all the articles we're writing, the Chalk Talk episodes, all that stuff. So appreciate you, Pointer Doug. If you want to support here on YouTube, that's another way to do it, and we greatly appreciate that for sure. It's just Patreon is definitely the best way to support the show. People ask that all the time, hey, what can we do? And that's the way we roll. So let's hit these questions in the Patreon group. It's another perk to being in there is you can ask questions for the show, same as super chats here. And we try to get the regular chats in the live stream as well. Sometimes, obviously, you guys know it either goes off the rails or we get too far off topic. We don't get a chance to hit them. But here's what Todd Larson asked. I'm wondering if maybe we have a little bit of a problem with our mock drafts, considering the last few days of Gutey. Last few drafts of Gutey. He seems to group together several picks for what the room he is trying to upgrade. Think about it. 3 safeties, 2 tight ends, a crap load of receivers. This draft is defensive tackle. So I believe he will rebuild the room with a 330-pound and a true three-tech defensive tackle. So he's thinking more along the lines of, let's go get a 1-tech and a 3-tech. I like it. And I wouldn't be surprised if he took a third defensive tackle, I think is what he was saying there, late round. So I believe we trade back first round, get someone like Grant or Tyleek, then come back and get a player like TJ Sanders. If the trade back works right, we may pick up a wide receiver between these 2 defenders, then fill positions of need from there. Just a thought, what do you think? I think it's a great game plan, Todd. I think it's well thought out. Now, the only thing that I see in that idea there that might be, I would push back a little bit, is the reason we took so many safeties because there was no one left in the safety room, if you'll remember, right? We cleaned house. And that's why I always kind of gave Joe Barry a little bit of a pass, like, we pretend like Jeff Hafley just come in here and completely turn this defense around. Boy, we got rid of our starting Mike and Devondre Campbell. We got rid of both of our safeties, our starting safeties, which was Jonathan Owens and Darnell Savage, right? So we kind of scrapped that whole room, and that creates more voids. Now, when you look at defensive tackle this year, we lost TJ Slayton, so there's one void, right? And then you got to look at Kobe Wooden, in my opinion. And nothing personal toward Kobe Wooden. I just think he's the guy, if we're going to let one go, that's probably him. Or if you're going to push a guy down and maybe try to slide him onto the practice squad, it's probably him. He just, 50 PFF grade. He kind of hasn't lived up to the expectations. He's also been kind of banged up. So it would take him moving off the roster to justify taking 2 defensive tackles. So you got to kind of model your roster out and look at it and go, okay, how many spots are actually there to fill, if that makes sense. So, I would be totally on board with him taking 2. And again, nothing personal toward Kobe Wooden. He could play football around me in his sleep, right? But I do think we can do better than that, at least what we've seen up to this point. And who knows, maybe you go 1 defensive tackle and Kobe Wooden comes out this year, all extra motivated and just plays like gangbusters. That would be absolutely awesome too. So great comment, great question there, Todd. Appreciate you. Andy Monday, Clayton and the boys. He says, do you think that over the years a front 7 defender's power rush or speed rush stays intact longer? Because of inevitable injuries, it's the power rush usually, right? Perhaps that's Gutey's thinking when choosing between an edge with speed and an edge with power. I think you're spot on, Andy. And I'll tell you, when you get asked questions like this, I try to remove my personal opinion because I'm a dumb redneck from Tennessee that don't know anything. I try to look at what people that I respect in the industry think about that. And you guys know I've been very, very vocal. Greg Cosell is at the top of the list for me in terms of guys and gals that scout out football players and understand what pro football teams are looking for. And he always says you've got to have a power element to your pass rush. You've got to. Each player. That's the only knock on James Pierce Jr. You go, okay, he's a little undersized, but he's got great reach, and that's huge in rushing the passer. But he's not a power rusher. He's a speed rusher. And I like what Andy's saying here because that's the first thing that's going to go as you get older is your speed. And people say, well, you're going to get weaker too. Probably, but not quicker than the speed goes, right? And on top of that, if you learn how to still rush with power using your hands, whether it's a punch, pull, and swim, whether it's a dip and rip, all of those things that you could even incorporate power into, because if you set it up with that straight arm rush or just a straight bull rush, those type of things, the swat and swim where you're just literally smacking somebody to the side and swimming over top of them. If you can set those things up, then you can learn to use your hands. Now you've got a counter move to your counter moves to your counter move, right? Those things are absolutely huge. But yeah, to me, this is something I've been very inaccurate on in the past as just a football fan. I didn't realize how important the power rush was. And that's why I'm so high on Walter Nolan when other people aren't. People will look at other pass rushers and go, well, I like him better. I like that one better. He's more of an athletic freak. That may be the case. But Walter Nolan, Greg Cosell's words, not mine, and several other people, Adam Kaplan and other people that covered the draft said, Walter Nolan is this year's Jalen Carter. Now, he might not be quite as good, but the way he rushes the passer, Greg Cosell said it best. He said, as I'm watching Walter Nolan's tape from 23 and 24, and I just see him absolutely dominate great SEC offensive linemen, just driving them into the backfield. He said, I think of Jalen Carter every time. And I remember Jalen Carter being extremely high on our board when he came out. And why was he so high? Because Greg Cosell said this dude. Greg Cosell said the year before Jalen Carter came out of college into the draft, he said Jalen Carter was the best interior defensive lineman in the entire. He would have been the best in the draft. And then he goes back to college another year and comes out and he's the best defensive tackle. Now there were some personal issues there, right? That obviously have not translated over to the NFL. He seems to have, stayed in line. And many people said if they could put him with his teammate there, Jordan Davis and other Georgia Bulldogs, maybe they can hold each other accountable in Philly. It worked out. And that's the other thing. Like when you do mock drafts, I'm just kind of thinking out loud now. Andy, it's a great question and a great comment there, Andy, because it does kind of trigger a bunch of thoughts. How many times have you done a mock draft? People, well, we're good at that position. We need this position, right? You'll see them all over Twitter saying that. I wonder how many Philadelphia Eagle fans were saying that when they took Jordan Davis, and the next year they took Jalen Carter. And then I think they went interior defensive line again last year, right? When you do that, it allows you to just let Milton Williams walk, and now you're capitalizing on a much cheaper rookie contract with a defensive lineman, right? Or, if they're on that same rookie contract, and then when you get the extension, the first year of that cap hit on the new extensions, almost pennies on the dollars compared to what it's going to blimp up to. So, you can't get caught up in the whole, well, we're good at that position, or we already drafted that position last year, right? The goal is, what are the most important positions and how do we fill those and keep that rotation going? And also what we led the show with, you're going to miss on picks. Everybody misses on picks. So keep swinging on those important positions so you let's say you hit on 1 out of 3, right? That's why I'm not ruling out edge defender. If we have time tonight, we're going to talk edge defender. That's kind of how I see that. And again, I'm sure there were Eagle fans going, I can't believe we took another defensive tackle. They won the Super Bowl. Worked out, right? So build the trenches. Build the trenches. As Emilio says, build the wall, which is ironic because he's the interim Mexican on the show here. He cracks me up. So Andy Monday says, you recently talked about Jack Sawyer and how having Tyleik Williams on the D-line probably inflated Sawyer's performance. Remember Miles Jack coming into the draft? I watched film on him shooting gaps and making stops, but I noticed who was eating blocks to help to make that happen for Jack, Kenny Clark. Go back and watch it if you have the time. That's interesting, man. I don't know enough about that situation. If we get a chance, we'll go check it out. I didn't realize that Kenny Clark and Miles Jack played together, but I'm telling you, that's a real thing. Just like it's a real thing when you've got, 2 different pass rushers, whether it's 2 D tackles or 2 edge defenders. And I can't remember if Miles Jack probably played a hybrid type backer, I would imagine, especially with his athletic prowess. It's kind of like with Notre Dame. I'm a big Notre Dame fan, and they've got a position called Viper, where it's a pass rushing outside linebacker. It's almost like they like to play a lot of 4-3 under, 4-3 over. It's a multiple style defense essentially, and you got a guy that can rush the passer but also drop. And they're constantly rotating guys in and out of that position. But if you get to the point where you've got 2 pass rushers that are effective on a defensive line, now you've got to decide which one made the other look better, right? A good example was last year's draft. I believe it was last year's. Byron Murphy. You guys remember, we had Byron Murphy really high. We had Tavondre Sweat really high. And we kept saying, yeah, but which one's better? Is the better one making the other one look, a little more talented than they actually are? And, if I had to pick between the two, this is me personally, I liked Tavondre Sweat, but I would have picked Byron Murphy. Byron Murphy didn't do anything this year. Tavondre Sweat lit it up, according to PFF. And on top of that, Tavondre Sweat's RAS was a 3. Now, immediately you'll get the Packer draft nicks that say, well, we'd never take them. You can't take them. The RAS is too low. I can't remember who drafted Tavondre Sweat, but I bet you they're damn glad they did. And that RAS is important, don't get me wrong, but it ain't everything. At the end of the day, man, the goal is to see ball, get ball, and if someone else has the ball, hurt that man who has that ball, right? And keep the ball away from that bad man. So I think it's important to kind of put everything into perspective. And that's why when we do our draft board, the way we do it is so you've got this visualization of everything across the board, and you can compare apples to apples with everybody. Like, we're going to drop this down. Thanks to everybody with the Patreon questions. Definitely appreciate it. That's one of my favorite things about the Patreon group. So just another perk of being in there and supporting the show. If I pull up our draft board here real quick, I think I've got the right one here. Let me make sure. Yeah. So if I pull this up real quick, and hopefully y'all can see this okay. Let me try to get it a little bit. There we go, a little larger for you. So if you look at our board, and I was doing just a little bit of research earlier with the top 30 visit that or not a top 30 visit, but a recent, I think it was like a Skype interview the Packers did with guys. But if you look at these positions here and all these players, right, and across the board, we've got everything listed out. The PFF 22 position ranking, 23 ranking, 24 ranking, where they were on the PFF big board, where they were on the consensus big board, where Daniel Jeremiah had them. And I always, we just put in a ton of Kyle Krabs from the 33rd team. We just put in a ton, I think 100 more grades in. So the board has just grown and maneuvered and switched and flipped and flopped. But I always keep in the earliest grades because that's the most important to me. As the draft grows near, people change their mind. They like this. I want to know your earliest prediction because I can go get the most recent stuff. I can just go to their website and pull it up. I want to know what people thought about prospects as soon as the season wrapped up because that's what's fresh on your mind is the tape. What's fresh on your mind is who was successful. What's fresh on your mind is how did they contribute to their college program as opposed to, I tell you, man, that 40-yard dash was pretty impressive. Let's bump him up 40 spots. You understand what I'm saying? So, that stuff is way more important. I will always lean on the tape and what they did on the field as opposed to the underwear Olympics. Now, that's what's so appealing to me with James Pierce Jr. is James Pierce Jr. was always ranked high before he ran the 4.47 40 at the combine. So it's there was always production there. Doesn't mean he's the perfect fit. Again, he doesn't rush with power, so that worries you. But across the board, you can compare all these. If we go down right here, let's say with Tet McMillan, over here on the right, and you can't see it because of our QR code there, but that's Greg Cosell. Gave him a 5-point bonus. Greg Cosell absolutely loved him, right? Well, Mason Graham, he wasn't overall impressed with Mason. He's not saying Mason Graham isn't worthy of the 4th overall pick. He was just yeah, what you see is what you get there. We know how good he is. So I'm not going to give him a huge bonus, right? But Tet McMillan, he loved Tet McMillan. Another one he really liked was Cam Ward. He was on Cam Ward at the end of the college football season, really going in off of Cam Ward's tape from last year. Greg Cosell was this dude has elite level traits. So that stuff you can compare apples to apples across the board. Now you see the RASs. If they get that 5-point bonus, that means it's a 9+ RAS, right? 3 is an 8+. 1 is a 7+. A 6 means they got a perfect 10 or a 999. We just rounded it up. So when you begin to look at prospects across the board, the more boxes you have filled up, they should really pique your interest. And it just so happens one of those top 30 visits is Shamar Stewart out of Texas A&M. And look, he's got the Senior Bowl bonus as well, right? That means that I think it was Daniel Jeremiah we used for that. He picked his standouts all week long, the guys who really popped off the tape when it came to the practice footage as well as the game itself. So we gave him a 5-point bonus with the Senior Bowl. That typically translates. Another one was Mike Green, right? Edge defender. Another one, Walter Nolan. So when you get these players that have this stuff all the way across the board, like Shamar Stewart got the Senior Bowl bonus. RAS, he got the maximum bonus. Greg Cosell gave him a 1-point bonus. He locked him, but he's he needs to learn how to rush the passer. He's just an athletic freak. He just needs to learn how to rush the passer. Now, if you go down to my boy Walter Nolan here, why did I like him so much? Senior Bowl bonus. Greg Cosell said he's the best defensive tackle in this entire draft. Yes, that means better than Mason Graham as well, who's in the 4th spot. And you hear that and you probably think, well, Clayton, why don't you put him above him on your board? That's not how our board operates. You put all the data in, you remove your personal bias, and where the players fall, they fall. That's kind of how we like to do it. So I'm really happy with the way it's come together this year. And Emilio has been so helpful in bouncing ideas off of Tim and Jacob as well. Emilio has just worked his ass off on this board, and it's really, really come together. So anyway, I just wanted to explain that because that's kind of how I look at that. And you can compare these guys across the board. If it's Shamar Stewart on the board and it's James Pierce Jr. and you look at him, okay, James Pierce Jr. is 1 tier higher than Shamar Stewart. So that would say, okay, you should probably take him. Not necessarily. He doesn't meet the athletic threshold for the Packers. Shamar Stewart does. Okay, well, that's one notch for Shamar Stewart. He didn't perform in the East-West Shrine Bowl or the Senior Bowl. James Pierce Jr. didn't. Shamar Stewart did, and he stood out, right? RAS, James Pierce Jr. got a 9+, but Shamar Stewart had a better RAS. James Pierce Jr. did not get a Greg Cosell bonus, but Shamar Stewart did. That's where you kind of look at it and go, damn, maybe we like Shamar Stewart a little bit better. When you get in those clusters where they're close, you got to make that decision of what's most important to you. So anyway, it's just a little glance into the draft board. And again, you guys have access to that over at the PFF. At the at the Patreon group, just patreon.com/Packer Fan Total Access. Go to the chat. You'll see there's just a designated locked chat that's always going to have an updated link. And I got to get the new one out tonight because, like I said, the board shuffled big time today. So, all right, let's get into the first topic here. Appreciate everybody in the chat. If you would hit that like button for us, feel free to subscribe to the channel if you're new here and let us know what we can do better. And if you don't like the show to the point where we can't save it, then hey, appreciate you swinging through, man. We appreciate it if you don't tell everybody how bad it sucks. So here's an article we put together earlier, and it's just real short. This is some Dane Brugler stuff in here that I'm really excited to share with you guys and gals. Make sure you go get his guide, The Beast. If you're a member of I think it's The Athletic through the New York Times, I believe it is, it's only like $1 or $2, something crazy. And you get access to The Beast. I mean, I'm almost positive I didn't pay extra for it. I'm just a member over there, so you get access to it because Dane Brugler's doing work with them. So make sure you check that out. 2 wide receivers on the Packers' radar who have separated themselves, okay? And what do I mean by separated themselves? Meaning they're the top receivers on our board that the Packers have met with in a top 30 visit, okay? So I said in terms of top 30 visits, Packers GM Brian Gutey seems to be considering taking a wide receiver in round 1, something that's not been done in 23 years when the general manager Mike Sherman selected Javon Walker with pick 20. Those receivers are listed below along with their ranking on our PTA Big Board and Dane Brugler's scouting report for both. So let's kind of dive into these guys. Top one on our board that the Packers had a top 30 visit with is Emeka Egbuka. He's in the 20 spot on our PTA Big Board. Here is what Dane Brugler had to say about Emeka Egbuka. A 3-year starter at Ohio State, Egbuka worked primarily out of the slot, and offensive coordinator Chip Kelly's multiple heavy movement scheme. 81.1% of his 2024 snaps came in the slot. Over his 4 seasons in Columbus, he played next to 4 wide receivers who ultimately became top 20 draft picks. It's Marvin Harrison Jr., Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave, and Jackson Smith-Njigba. And 2 likely future early round draft picks in Jeremiah Smith and Carnell Tate, which made it easy to overlook his offensive impact. But Egbuka finished his career with the most receptions, 205, in Ohio State history. I'm going to say that again. He's got the most receptions in Ohio State history. And second in receiving yards, 30 yards behind Michael Jenkins. If you want flashy, skip to another report. If you want a savvy, rugged receiver with NFL-ready instincts, Egbuka fits the bill. He skillfully attacks the leverage of the coverage and with manipulative pacing and footwork to cleanly enter and exit the break point. Although his targets will be more crowded in the NFL, his tracking skills and hand strength will be valuable assets. Overall, Egbuka is a very quarterback-friendly target, not because he's bigger, stronger, or faster than defenders, just because he understands detailed subtleties to uncover and command the catch point. Though he can line up outside, he would thrive in a Rashee Rice-like slot role where he can expand a play-calling menu with his diverse skill set. Now, what is he talking about with leverage of the coverage? We've talked about this time and time again. In Matt LaFleur's offense, there are a bunch, and I mean a bunch, of choice routes. To play F, you got to know all the choice routes. You got to know, depending on the leverage in which the cornerback is playing you, the DBs are playing you, that's going to determine what route you run. Like I use the wolf concept as a good example of a choice route kind of combo, right? If you're in the 2, imagine the 1 outside and then the 2 in the slot, and you're running wolf. What that is the 1 runs an out and the 2 runs a corner. Well, if they're playing some kind of coverage where they've got a deep third over top of that corner, you as the slot, if there's a choice route active on that, and it sounds like Matt LaFleur has them all over the joint in his scheme, if you're running that corner route and you see that deep third immediately jump to outside leverage, then what you're going to want to do is sell the corner and then maybe throw a different route in, and they've got those baked into the offense. Now, it might be kind of a corner dig where you're going to just take a 2-step into the corner, shuffle it down, and then bring it back almost like a Dino, like a whip or something. So if you do that, you've got to be able to read the DB first and foremost. Then you've got to have the ability to break at the right time and create the chemistry with the quarterback, get your head around, make the catch. All those things have to be just a split second. That's why Aaron Rodgers got so frustrated with that young receiving core. And I remember, people getting upset with Aaron. And look, I would rather my quarterback not be complaining about teammates on the field. I got you. But it's frustrating when you know if the receiver is not going to read the defense correctly, then what if he didn't read that outside leverage correctly? He ran the corner route, and you're expecting him on that corner dig, and then you shoot the ball across the middle. That's why you end up being hesitant on letting the ball go. And I'm telling you, man, if you hesitate for a split second in the NFL, you're screwed. So why is Egbuka, to me, a little more appealing or just as appealing as other receivers? It's got huge size and this and that. We all think, well, go get Jaden Higgins. And I love Jaden Higgins, don't get me wrong. Just 6'4", good speed, throw the jump ball, right? Matt LaFleur's offense does not operate that way. It doesn't. And again, I'm not going to sit here and play into the whole idea that our offense all of a sudden sucks because we didn't win the Super Bowl. We had a damn good offense last year. The main issue with our offense last year was turning the football over. Jordan Love being banged up all year long, not being able to use his legs the way he needs to, not being able to step into throws the way he needs to, and us throwing interceptions was the main issue. It wasn't, in my opinion, the receivers. Now, the drops, yeah, you got to clean them up. But the fact that you still had such a talented or effective passing game with those drops really says a lot. It says a lot about what Matt LaFleur was able to do with the quarterback battling 3 injuries, being inaccurate at times, and not being able to scramble, and the receivers having a drop issue, right? Egbuka, great hands, understand choice routes. Greg Cosell said, you're getting a 10-year vet the day he walks into the building, is what he said. Like, you want to clean up some of that stuff. And the argument immediately with like a player like Egbuka is, okay, you don't have that big jump ball guy. You don't have that boundary X guy. No, you don't. But what you've got is a guy who can understand all the choice routes, pick up the system quick. That's the strength of his game. A crisp route runner, strong hands, all those things you need. And you can now put him in the F and put Jaden at Z. And those are very interchangeable. F is basically a moving Z, right? So you may have a guy line up in the slot, and then the Z moves over. Now he's technically in the slot. That's why I'm saying like it's important to have 2 of those guys. And with Dontavion Wicks' drop issue last year, you could tell they really tried to incorporate him somewhat into that role along with slot. And then they wanted to work him into boundary X when we had the issues with Romeo Dobbs, whether it was with the suspension and the injuries. It would be huge to have someone like Egbuka. So again, you've got Tet McMillan, then Egbuka on our list. Okay. And then after that, I think it's Luther Burden. And then I'm trying to remember who the next one was, just in order here. Egbuka, then Luther Burden, and then it's Matthew Golden, which is actually going to be the next guy we're going to talk about here in a second. But let's move on through the scouting report here. Strengths. Innate ball judgment skills to track. So how many times have we seen, like even Christian Watson has struggled with this, right? And he's gotten way better now. These receivers, MVS, I don't mean to be disrespectful, but MVS looked like me trying to track a deep ball. He could scorch the defense, and boy, he couldn't track the ball worth crap, right? That is absolutely huge. I'll never forget, like playing baseball growing up, I was always a shortstop, always middle infield and pitcher. And when I got to the high school level, it was actually my 8th grade year, I made the varsity high school team my 8th grade year. And Coach Morris was like, we got to get him in the lineup. So they put me in left field because we had studs in the middle infield already, seniors and juniors, right? They put me in left field. It looked like I was on skates out there. And it's because trying to track the ball, controlling your head jarring as you're running is so much more difficult than people understand. It's Coach Lynn, if he's in the chat, and I haven't been able to keep up with the chat, I apologize. He can tell you this, man, coaching receivers. It is one of you've either got it or you don't. This boy didn't have it. Tracking water, trying to, I could track fly balls and catch them, but boy, it was ugly. It was ugly. So anyway, limber upper body and above average hand strength to finish grabs from difficult angles. Always had feel for commanding catch point. 16 combined interceptions as sophomore and junior DB in high school. That's wild. So he always had a feel for commanding the catch point, controlling that catch point where the DB and the receivers there at the same time. Well, he played DB in high school and actually had 16 interceptions between his sophomore and junior year. That's wild. Football IQ and toughness are, quote, already on a pro level. You're hearing Dane Brugler say it after Greg Cosell said it. So you can check the box there for sure. According to Ohio State assistant coach Brian Hartline. Gains ground quickly versus off coverage and a magnet to coverage voids. That's what we're talking about. Just finding those voids, finding those open spots. Knows how to set up defenders and snap off stem regardless of the route. Consistently works back to the football and extends to meet it, especially on crossers and overs. Finds rooms to operate even when the field shrinks. 15 of 24 career touchdown catches came in the red zone. So think about that. You see a guy of his size and you think, all right, that's not a red zone threat. That's one of his important aspects of his game, because the reality is when you get down there and that back line of the end zone becomes 3 extra defenders essentially, right? And it shortens everything. You got someone like Gutey that can play in those tight spaces, as where someone like a Jaden Higgins or a Ted McMillan might not be able to find that void as easy, being a bigger body receiver and used to stretching the field and having space to work, right? So there's definitely a pro and con to that aspect. He showed clear improvements as a blocker, asked to be puller to stone middle linebackers on super counter on 2024 Michigan State tape. He was a lead blocker pulling against middle linebackers in the Michigan State game. So go back and watch the highlights from the 2024 Michigan State Ohio State game and probably try to find some inside runs, and you'll see him probably getting up in the middle there and smacking linebackers in the mouth. That's pretty cool. Experience as a punt returner, 5.4 yards per attempt, and kick returner, 28.2 yards per kick return. Man, it seems like Gutey's kind of got his eye on several people that might be able to be returning kicks too. That's really cool. Let's see. NFL scouts say he competes with perfectionist mindset and doesn't waste an ounce of his talent. Voted a 2024 team captain and veteran presence, made the Buckeyes receiver room better. He joined Marvin Harrison Jr. as only players in school history with multiple 1,000-yard receiving seasons. I don't know how you can look at that and go, yeah, he's worthy of a first-round pick, And again, I'm not going to let the size deter me from that dude. It's just not going to happen. So let's see. He said he was a captain. I just want to check something real quick and make sure we got that in here. I don't know if we got him listed as a captain. We do. Okay, we're good. So he's a captain. The Packers met with him. He meets the threshold as well, and the Packers had a top 30 visit with him. The only thing he's missing is the Senior Bowl, to be honest with you. So I don't think he participated in the Senior Bowl. So, all right. Moving along, now let's talk about the weaknesses. Solid size, strength, and speed, but not exceptional in any of those areas, so not a physical freak. Physical press can slow him early in the route and diminish vertical capabilities. I like how it says early in the route, which means he's probably winning on the backside of that route. Emilio, you jump in there whenever you want, buddy. No rush at all, man. No rush at all. His few drops were a result of thinking about first move before securing the ball, so maybe needs to focus a little more on catching the ball as opposed to what's coming after catching it, right? Has some wiggle after the catch, but didn't force as many missed tackles as one might expect. Needs to drop pads as a ball carrier and be more physical as a finisher. Diverse and active as a blocker, but needs to do a better job controlling and maintaining angles once engaged. His left ankle injury as a junior, which required tightrope surgery, October of 2023, sidelining him for the 3 games and parts of the others. So there's some of the weaknesses, because there's no perfect prospects, right? It's just they don't exist. But you can see, man, a long list of strengths there with Emeka Egbuka. He's one of these guys that I'm really excited about. If he's there at 23, sign me up. Emilio, I know you probably caught the backside of this, man. Appreciate you jumping on here. I know you were like me out there in that rain today, man. Are you waterlogged?
Yeah, dude, I needed a hot shower. It was cold.
There ain't nothing better than a hot shower after a rainy day moment.
No. And I, cold and wet, 3 times over? Then it dried up for a second. Then I had to throw the sweatshirt on the rest of the day. It's like, what's going on? But yeah, no, I was listening to it, man. I've honestly really kind of always liked Egbuka. I just never really thought it was going to happen. But after we've done a little bit more diving into it, I think there's a real good chance, either that or maybe a trade back or something like that. I think that's a possibility. Out of all the ones we probably brought in, I think I'm most on Egbuka. And how can you go wrong with an Ohio State receiver that's taken off? Like you were saying, everyone that's come into the league, and then Jeremiah Smith, dude's working around it. Working around all these elite players. So I like him. Yeah.
And let me see here. We had a couple of things. All right, we're good there. Let's see what the chat's saying. J. Cole says, I wouldn't be surprised if we drafted him. Let's see. Blake B said, I'm on the Egbuka train. H.E. Solder, team captain. Egbuka is a Packer. I like it. Clint, the armchair quarterback, he'd look good in green and gold. Seems like everybody's pretty much on board. Board. And again, it doesn't mean that if someone in our top 10 were to drop to that spot that we wouldn't go, oh, man, we'd rather have him, right? But if Egbuka's the best on the board at 23, man, shoot, yeah, let's go. I'm excited about it, man. I hope somehow he makes it to the Packers. And here we go. Deadfish says, if the Packers take him, I'll be okay with it, but I want the Packers to take Nolan, Grant, or Hanson. Who's Hanson? Who am I thinking of? Hanson. That may be a typo. That may be a typo.
Harmon, maybe?
Harmon, I bet. Harmon, there you go. Yeah, and I would be okay with any of those three, to be honest.
I mean, the way the board's looking, if you got a couple of those perfect fits, you got TJ Sanders is kind of out there. I mean, I just think it's a super deep D-line draft that if you find your receiver that you want early, take him, because you can still find a pretty decent D-lineman later, round 2, round 3, round 4. Like, it's super deep.
Yeah. And it's so hard for me to say that, but as we get closer to the draft, I'm coming to that realization, like, it would probably make sense to wait on D tackle and edge if you're going to go that route, because there's so many in this draft, man. You can really maximize. And no worries, Deadfish said, sorry about the typo. Man, you know who you're talking to? I typo while speaking. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So it's all good. It's all good. All right, so that is, again, Emeka Egbuka, and that's Dane Brugler's breakdown of him. Let's move on to the next guy, and it's Matthew Golden. And listen, I've kind of grew off of him. Matter of fact, let's hit this super chat before we jump into it. United Bates, thank you for the super chat, buddy. He says, when Nixon said he doesn't want to return kicks anymore, what's your opinion on the Packers organization take on that? I think that they got to prepare that he's going to not want to return kicks. And I know there's some people that are going, well, you can make him return kicks. You can. You could probably force him out there, say it's conduct detrimental to the team, but don't think that's best for the team.
Yeah, you could make him return kicks and he could get stuck again like he did in the playoff game. And
and it seems like everything that, like one of the guys we're going to cover here in a second, if we have time, the new top 30 visit, late round prospect, never heard of him. Guess what one of his strengths are? Kick return.
Yep.
So it's like I think that Gutey is really looking into different players that could potentially return kicks.
And you know what that would do for a rookie is like, hey, you have one other chance to make this team. You know what I mean? Like if you are going to be our return specialist, hey, we'll find a spot on the roster for you, right? If you're that good with the ball in your hands off a kick, like use that to your advantage. Get on the field any way you can. As a freshman, as a sophomore, junior, you're trying to get on the field just in college, whatever. Let's give yourself any opportunity you can, because obviously all these guys that aren't drafted first or second probably are just going to be special team aces anyway. That's where you get your hay. That's how you get on the field. And then we can grow from there.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's a great question, Bates. Appreciate the super chat, man. All right, moving on to the next prospect here. We only had 2 that we highlighted that were going, all right, man, if the Packers are going to go wide receiver in the first round, this is another guy. It doesn't mean that Ted McMillan isn't going to be end up being a top 30 visit, or even if he's not a top 30 visit, doesn't mean they're not excited about him too, right? Same thing with Luther Burton. There's a lot to like about LB3. It's just these are the guys that the top 30 visits are already in the bank on, right? And we'll update this article as we go along throughout the year. So in the 37 spot, Matthew Golden, wide receiver out of Texas. Now going into this, I'm thinking, and I haven't even read this article yet, guys. I put it together without reading it. I want it to be organic on the air, and let's all kind of uncover this information together. On the surface, I go, 23 is a little bit of a reach for Matthew Golden for me. Now, that's what our board says. Gutey may have him higher than Egbuka, right? He's definitely a burner. What do you have, 4.29 speed, I think it was, Emilio, something like that. So he's definitely got the speed to take the top off the defense. Love this shot right here, too, by the way, the one-handed grab in the end zone. Just a great shot. So here we go, Matthew Golden. Here's what Dane Brugler had to say about him. 1-year starter at Texas. Golden was the Z receiver in head coach Steve Sarkisian's RPO pro-style spread offense and was used across the formation with heavy motions, 76.1% of the snaps wide, 23.9% in the slot. After 2 promising seasons in Houston's air raid scheme, he was an underrated addition for the Longhorns in 2024 and proved especially valuable when it mattered most, averaging 102.8 receiving yards over his final 4 games. As they're coming down the stretch and they're looking to go on a playoff run and they're looking to battle in the SEC championship, that's when he played his best games. Make a mental note of that.
Yep.
That's important. I mean, that is really important. SEC championship and 3 playoff games is it highlights. Fluid in and out of his breaks. Golden shows a plan as a route runner. I love his ability to break down corners by keeping his eyes, hips, and feet in sync. That coordination also translates to the catch point with his very natural ball skills to track, frame, and finish. Overall, it might bother some teams, but he doesn't have better size. But Golden also doesn't have any glaring flaws to his game that would keep him from becoming a productive pro. He can play inside or outside and become the go-to target for an NFL offense. What have we heard with these two prospects, these 2 wide receiver prospects that Gutey has met with, right, with top 30 visits? Both of them can play inside and outside. Mm-hmm. More so Matthew Golden outside than Igbuka, but Igbuka with that moving Z experience and Greg Cosell saying, hey, this dude within a Sean McVay style system, which is what Green Bay runs, would fit right in. So what do you think about that scouting report there early on?
Yeah, I mean, going a couple different quarterbacks, he's worked through it. I like Golden. I like his speed. We want a fast guy. I think Jaden Reed's quick. I don't think that if we don't have a 4-2 guy on the roster, or playing currently, I don't think that the offense is going to completely fall off a cliff, right? I don't think that that's going to completely hurt us. I think we really leaned into our run game. I think we forget about that. Like, we were a run-heavy offense because we had to lean on Jordan. Let's work off of that. Let's get our play-action game going. You might not need that 4-2 speed to beat a play-action. I mean, Clay, you get sleight of hand in college football, right? You're sitting there, that first down play action, those backers just sit there, dude, right over the top. That's all it takes. So something simple like that, you might not need that breakneck speed.
Yeah, and it all comes down to how defenses are going to play Green Bay as well, right? Like, they're going to play you based off the tape last year until you prove otherwise, right? And what did we do last year? How many plays did you see us take the top off? Didn't happen a whole lot.
Right.
We just worked underneath, worked the crossers, worked the slot cross.
I mean, yeah, if you draft Golden to take over Dobbs' spot and just run streaks all game, cool. But what's his stamina at? How long is he going to be able to do? How long is he going to be able to run 4.24? I mean,
that's stuff that dumb, out of shape people like us usually don't consider. We're just going, man, why ain't he getting open out there? And it's like that. I watched Dobbs do that 2 years ago, and I've talked to you guys about that. That boy was running go route. I think I counted 6 straight go routes. And he never came out of the game. I'm like, how in the hell is he standing up right now?
How are you able to sell it each time?
Yeah.
I mean, like, you have a corner in front of you. You have a safety over top. You have to make him commit to you. If not, Jacobs is getting blown up in the backfield, or the deep in, or the the little tight end curl 8 yards down. He's going to get blown up if you can't sell that streak.
Yep, that's a fact, man. All right, that's going to do it for hour 1. For those of you listening on the pod, we're going to continue this conversation on the other side for hour 2, breaking down Matthew Golden and then diving into some edge prospects as well. But we'll see you over on hour 2. We appreciate y'all.